Welcome back to another thrilling episode of the Midnight Slow Burn Stories podcast, an original Koiru production, all rights reserved. Tonight, we're diving into electrifying stories where desires ignite, passions blaze, and every whispered word is loaded with tantalizing promise. So go ahead, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let that exhilarating energy build up inside you.
My name is Rachel and I'm 42 years old. For most of my adult life, it's just been me and my son, Adrian. He's 23 now and we've always been close. More like teammates than just mother and son. We've been through thick and thin together, navigating life as a duo after his father walked away before Adrian turned 2. I never thought I'd share this part of my life. Feels strange even thinking about it now. But something happened not long ago that I still can't stop thinking about. It was a quiet winter evening in our small apartment in Portland. The old building didn't retain heat well, and the air had that biting chill that seemed to settle in your bones. Adrian had come home from his part-time shift at the warehouse, looking utterly worn down. His classes at the community college had been piling up, and it showed on his face. Dark circles under his eyes, heavy steps, a tired slouch. "You look exhausted," I said, watching him kick off his boots. "I am," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "Didn't sleep much last night either." "If you want," I said, "you can rest in my room. The heater works better in there." He nodded without protest and made his way to my bedroom. I followed a few minutes later with a thick comforter. He was already lying on top of the covers, his arms folded behind his head, eyes closed but not asleep. I laid the blanket over him and sat down beside him on the edge of the bed. "Thanks," he murmured without opening his eyes. For a while we sat like that. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking a little. "I didn't mean to make things weird." I stared at the ceiling again, my mind spinning. I couldn't find the right words. My instincts were colliding. One side screaming that this was my son, and the other side drowning in questions and feelings I couldn't untangle. "It's okay," I managed softly, though I didn't know if I believed it. He turned his head toward me, eyes apologetic. "I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I've just been confused lately." "Me too," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Before either of us could say more, the doorbell rang, sharp and sudden. We both flinched, jolted back into reality. I sat up, grateful for the interruption, though my legs felt shaky beneath me. When I opened the door, I found our neighbor Joel standing there. Joel was in his late 40s, kind and always helpful around the building. He had one of those easy smiles that made people feel at ease. But tonight, as he stood on the porch, his expression held concern. "Hey Rachel," he said. "Just wanted to check in. I noticed the building's heat's been acting up. Wanted to see if you needed a space heater or anything." I blinked at him, trying to compose myself. "Oh, thank you, Joel. Yeah, it's been a bit cold. That would be great." He smiled again and stepped inside. As he did, I saw Adrian standing in the hallway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He didn't say anything, but there was something in his eyes. A flicker, quick but unmistakable. Was it jealousy? Joel chatted with me while checking the radiator, asking about work, about Adrian's classes. I answered automatically, glancing toward Adrian every now and then. He stood like a statue, watching us, silent. After a few minutes, Joel nodded, satisfied. "Looks like things are working okay now. But let me know if it drops again." "Thank you." "Really?" I said, walking him to the door. I tried to smile, but my mind was still tangled in everything that had just happened. As Joel left, I turned to find Adrian still watching me. His gaze lingered on the closed door, then shifted back to mine. Something unspoken passed between us again. Something unresolved. He didn't say a word. He just turned and walked down the hallway toward his room. The door clicked softly behind him, and I stood there in the silence, holding 1,000 questions I didn't know how to ask. I stood in the hallway watching Adrian's bedroom door, my thoughts racing. The silence in the apartment was louder than any argument we could have had. There was no yelling, no blame, just the weight of everything unsaid between us. My chest felt heavy, and despite the warmth of the radiator finally kicking in, I felt cold. I returned to my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The blankets still rumpled from where we had just lain side by side. The echo of that closeness still lingered in the sheets. I pressed my hands into my lap, hoping it would quiet the shaking I felt inside. How had things gotten here? It wasn't just the moment between us tonight. It was years of leaning on each other, years of no one else stepping in. Adrian and I had become each other's whole world without realizing how close we were growing in ways that went beyond mother and son. I always thought I was giving him the security he needed, but maybe I'd been clinging to him just as much, too afraid to let him go. A soft knock at my door broke the quiet. "Come in," I said, my voice barely steady. Adrian stepped inside slowly. He didn't look angry, just lost. His eyes were tired, and his shoulders slumped like he was carrying something too heavy. He sat next to me again, keeping just enough space that it didn't feel like before, but not enough that it didn't still feel intimate. His hands rested in his lap, fingers twitching slightly, like he was working up the courage to speak. "Mom," he started, then paused. I'm sorry." I looked at him, waiting. "I don't know what I'm feeling lately, and I'm scared I made you uncomfortable earlier. That wasn't my intention. He trailed off, his eyes brimming with frustration. I reached out and placed my hand over his, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Adrian," I said softly, "I know this is complicated. We've been each other's everything for a long time. Sometimes the lines get blurry." He nodded slowly, still staring at his hands. "It didn't feel wrong," he admitted. "That's what scares me." My breath caught at that, not because I hadn't felt it too, but because hearing him say it out loud made it real, made it harder to dismiss. "I don't know what it means," I replied, "but I do know we need time. We can't rush through something we don't even understand." He looked up at me then, his eyes filled with a strange mix of fear, hope, and guilt. "Do you think I'm a bad person?" "No," I said quickly, firmly. "You're not a bad person, Adrian. Feelings are complicated. We can't always control them, but we can choose how we respond to them." He leaned into me then, not like before, but gently, resting his head on my shoulder the way he used to when he was a boy. It was comforting and nostalgic, but the tension still pulsed beneath the surface. I put my arm around him, holding him close, trying to separate all the emotions tangled in my heart. We sat like that for a long time, the quiet wrapping around us like another blanket. For the first time that evening, I let myself breathe. But then he lifted his head and looked at me again, his expression more serious now. "Something's changed, hasn't it?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. Because yes, something had changed. And pretending it hadn't would only make things worse. "Yes," I finally whispered. "But that doesn't mean we're lost. It just means we need to be careful and honest." He nodded again, and I could see the tension slowly ebbing from his face. "I don't want to hurt you." "I know," I said, brushing my hand down his back. "And I don't want you to feel ashamed." We didn't resolve anything in that moment. There were still too many questions, too many unknowns. But at least we'd taken one step out of the fog. And for now, that had to be enough. The next morning, I woke up to the faint sound of dishes clinking in the kitchen. For a moment, I thought maybe I had dreamed everything, that all the tension from the night before was just some figment of a restless mind. But as I pulled myself out of bed and stepped into the hallway, I saw Adrian at the sink, rinsing out his coffee mug. He looked over his shoulder when he heard me, his expression unreadable. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I replied quietly. There was an awkwardness to the way he moved, careful, restrained. I poured myself a cup of coffee, and we sat at the kitchen table in silence for a few minutes, neither of us knowing how to break the fragile calm that had settled over us. Finally he spoke. "Did you sleep okay?" "I did," I said, even though I hadn't. "You?" He gave a slight shrug. "Hard to tell." I took a sip from my cup and stared out the window. The streets below were wet from an early drizzle, and a breeze rustled the trees just outside the building. It was the kind of morning that usually felt peaceful, but today it only made the quiet between us feel heavier. "I've been thinking," Adrian said after a long pause. "Maybe I should stay with Uncle Greg for a bit, just until we figure things out." The words hit me like a sharp gust of wind. My heart sank, though I couldn't deny it made sense. We needed distance, time, space to understand what had happened between us and how to move forward without destroying the bond we'd always had. "Maybe that's a good idea," I said, though the words tasted bitter in my mouth. He nodded slowly. "Just for a little while. I think we both need to clear our heads." "I agree," I said softly, wrapping my fingers around the warm mug like it could anchor me. We didn't cry. We didn't fall apart. But something in that moment cracked quietly beneath the surface. It wasn't just the confusion from last night. It was the acknowledgement that we'd crossed a line we couldn't erase. And now we had to carry that knowledge between us, whether we spoke of it again or not. Adrian packed a small bag that afternoon. I helped him fold some clothes, my hands moving automatically while my mind spun with memories and fears. When he zipped up the duffel, he looked at me with a kind of look that held years of shared moments. Birthdays, scraped knees, late-night movies, but also the shadow of the night before. "I'm not running away, Mom," he said, trying to reassure me. "I just need to think. We both do." "I know," I whispered. He hesitated, then stepped forward and pulled me into a hug. It was warm and firm, familiar yet different. I wrapped my arms around him tightly, closing my eyes to stop the tears from falling. "I love you," he said into my shoulder. "I love you too," I replied. When he left, the apartment felt too big, too quiet. I wandered through the rooms like a stranger in my own home. Every place I looked reminded me of him, our routines, our closeness, our tangled lives. The silence pressed in on me, but somewhere underneath it, I knew this space was necessary for both of us. That evening, I sat on the couch, the television on but muted, letting the soft flicker of the screen distract me from the ache in my chest. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if we could go back to how things were or even if we should. But I did know that we had to be honest with ourselves now about everything. As the night settled in, I wrapped myself in a blanket and stared at the ceiling, whispering a quiet promise into the stillness that we would face whatever came next, one step at a time, with care and without shame.
Thank you for joining us on this amazing episode. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, remember that beneath every perfect facade lies a complex reality, and the pursuit of happiness is rarely a straightforward path.